Welcome to Mental Masturbation, a new YouTube series where I, your host Amorius, talk in depth and overanalyze things that don't actually matter. But fuck it, it's fun. So let's begin. Exactly how important is story in games? This is certainly a topic debated by fans and developers alike, and I of course have my own perspective, which I'll get to in a second. But before we get to that, it is worth mentioning what brought this topic to the forefront of gamer conversations. An article by developer Soren Johnson. Johnson makes the following argument. If the most important element of a game is its interactivity, then every static plot point a designer crams into the experience takes away from the centrality of the player. Put another way, if a game has a spoiler, is it really still a game? The problem with this argument is that it is predicated on the notion that interactivity is the most crucial aspect of a game. Though interactivity is the main aspect that differentiates games from other art forms, the most important aspect of a game is, like all other artistic mediums, the ability to connect with the observer, or in this case, player. Else why would games like Telltale's The Walking Dead connect to so many players as deeply as it does, and do so well commercially? Johnson does argue that most good games have story elements such as setting, tone, and characters, and though I agree with him that, in large part due to the presence of interactivity, it is best that games handle their narrative differently. This does not take away from the fact that there are still plenty that make use of more traditional plot structures that are still incredible. He also says, not every game is well suited to become a dynamic story generator. Some themes and mechanics are best handled against a mostly fixed backdrop. A hero needs an evil wizard to slay, a soldier needs an enemy to fight, and a plumber needs a princess to rescue. The solution is to use a light touch, to suggest rather than to dictate. To let go of the very idea of plot, let the player explore the world, and then assemble the final story in her own head. Again, I disagree. Though interactive plots are more memorable, like Dragon Age and Mass Effect, which depend in part on your choices, games like Bioshock Infinite, Tomb Raider, and Assassin's Creed 4 are as fun as they are, in large part due to their relatively linear plots. It allows for the feeling of being a part of an interactive film. One of the key reasons I dislike most Nintendo games is the lack of a discernible plot, though it also has something to do with the fact they rely way too heavily on the same old IP. A dull and unoriginal story that is more open to interpretation will always, at least in my book, fail when compared to that of a good story told in a linear way, though a combination of the two is ideal. He continues. Games that focus purely on the designer's plot choices ignore that the most important part of a game is the player. Putting a story, regardless of its power or depth, inside a game is actually a crutch, an easy way out that stunts the advancement of our form. Games must leave room for the player, not just within the rules and in the mechanics and the systems, but within the story as well. Interestingly enough, Johnson's arguments themselves limit the player. Many players like the traditional narrative feel, and to claim that it is wholly limiting is only partially true, and can also be applied to any linear game, regardless of the presence of a narrative. A story is only as limiting as the authors of said story. Yes, it was disappointing that Bioshock Infinite had so little choice involved in the narrative, but this was largely disappointing because of the type of story that Infinite told. The multiverse plot point left plenty of room for player choice, but this isn't the case with the Tomb Raider reboot, which was linear but never felt so. Johnson's definition is more constricting than the constraints he's arguing against. The point is, there is no one certain way to tell a story in a game, but multiple. Let the player decide if they want to play what the developer wants to make, regardless of the structure of the narrative. On the other side of the spectrum, some argue that by not including a narrative at all, a game fails maximum potential. Arguing from this position, Lindsay Wheaton of Chico Central writes, people love stories. We live on them, and make every effort to live in them, and giving a game a good story can result in a truly moving experience. If you have a chance to tell a story that could potentially reach millions of people, there is no reason not to, and if a developer doesn't consider it important to put effort into creating a story, then I consider that developer to be unworthy of a 5 out of 5. The problem with Wheaton's position is that not all games need a good story to accomplish their goal. That said, a bad, half-assed plot can drastically hurt a game that has amazing gameplay. For this point, I present you with Skyrim, arguably my favorite game. Skyrim didn't need a main story. The gameplay, side plots, and the world was enough to make the game great. In fact, the inclusion of a poor main plot that you have to go through at least part of the way to get certain skills actually hurts the game. Story can help a game, but including a bad one can severely hurt a game. I return to the point that the real answer of how to make good art is simply that you just have to try what you like and see where that takes you. So, does a game need a story? No, but they need to be good in multiple aspects to make up for the fact that one is not present. Assassin's Creed 4 was fun, but not fun enough to really spend more than a few hours attacking ships as a pirate. If it weren't for its story, the game would not have left much of an impact. No, a game does not need a story, but the inclusion of one can drastically help its impact on the player. So saying that you need a story or you don't need one, there really is no simple rule. It's all dependent on the game and the developer. The developers of Minecraft did not need a story. Skyrim needed a backdrop, needed some plot elements, but the main aspect of the game that made it good was the world it built, not the story. Though, including a good story in Skyrim would have made it better. So, that's it for me today. Let me know what you guys think. It's my first video. I know the audio sounds like shit. I'm working on that. I'm using a little headset mic right now. Also, how I edit this video, I'm working on it. Videos in the future will be better. Thank you for watching.
Just hear the old men say, goodbye, farewell.